Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
From her rich and fertile valleys to the shores of her icy seas, from her fields and farms and shellfish beds and her many nurseries, for the finest of her flavor, for the freshest by far, choose the things Alaskans bring to the market where you are. Products that we're proud to call our own, and it's all Alaska grown.
The National Weather Service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is July 26, 2016. When we're not here, be sure to check out our information by going to weather.gov/Alaska. We have changed some things up on the internet a little bit, so be sure to play around with our websites, or you can always call our 1-800 number 472-0391. Now, in just a few moments, we're going to be on to some very interesting weather across the state. So we'll start in just a moment here. We're going to look at the watches, warnings, and advisories across the area. I'm going to step over so you can see we do have a watch out, and this is out for the Taya River here in the southeast. We're looking at rain amounts between 1 to 2 inches tomorrow. So river levels are going to be peaking on Wednesday for that location, and also a couple of other areas to be aware of across the Copper River and Fairbanks area. We do have some flood advisories out. For the Fairbanks area, we have the Chena River, and that has been going towards peak levels, and they're expecting that to be running a little bit high through Friday. Also across the Copper River, we are going to be seeing for tomorrow with the rainfall that's coming across the Kennecott River is a flood advisory out, as they're going to be reaching peak levels through Wednesday, as we have another slot of rain set for Wednesday and possibly through till Thursday. So be on the lookout for those areas. Also, be advised that area rivers and streams, we want you to be prepared as we head into the middle of the week that we're going to have higher rainfall amounts coming through much of the area. So be advised that we're going to possibly see rises on rivers and streams. So if you have outdoor activities, and if you have homes near rivers and streams that tend to get these rises, please watch your forecast and stay aware and stay safe. Now, looking at the systems out towards the west, just a little note here, we have a ridge that's been in place across the western areas of the Bering. Not much change with this system. What our real focus is going to be on here is to the north. We have a low pressure system that's approaching from the Arctic. So this is going to be dropping to the northwest coast. You can kind of see a little bit of that spin on the satellite this evening with a large swath of moisture that's pulling up ahead of this low pressure system. Now let's take a look across the south part of the area. We have a low pressure system, and it's kind of spinning out at the moment. This is centered just to the south of the Alaska Peninsula and bringing a large swath of moisture across the southern areas of the state, with upper level disturbances moving through. Now let's take a look at the spin on this system with the center there near the Alaska Peninsula, and that large area of moisture, like I said, is just pulling on up into the interior locations of the state. A little bit of breaks allowing for areas to warm up in the central areas of the state. Therefore, some shower activity has made it across through Fairbanks. We have lighter showers really across the state this afternoon, mainly just seeing several hundredths of an inch up to a tenth of an inch. The highest rainfall accumulations have been over there at Yakutat, 4,500 hundredths, and Whittier had up to 76 hundredths the last time I had checked. Now, across the northeastern sector of the state, the Beaufort Seacoast there is seeing some light shower activity, but primarily dry at the moment across the northwest and dry across the eastern areas of the Bering as we have that ridge just setting and breaking down. But patchy fog to areas of fog further to the west will be the main issue across the Bering as we head into the night. Some drizzle and patchy fog will occur across the Aleutian Chain area and possibly making it into the Alaska Peninsula. The patchy fog is going to be all across the eastern areas, the Bering, moisture there, drizzle activity and fog all the way up to the northwest coast. Now what's going to happen is this front is going to start sagging down to the coast, and that's going to be bringing the upcoming rainfall for tomorrow. So look out for the evening hours to bring some thunderstorms across the central interior. Low pressure system is kind of reorganizing down there south of Kodiak Island. So along the coastal areas, look for some gustier winds developing along the northern Gulf and a little bit of a gust behind the backside of this low pressure system. So we also have a stronger southwesterly flow out ahead of this low pressure system, but mainly quiet conditions will occur for the Wednesday forecast. Some lighter gusts across the eastern areas of the Gulf, with the front really starting to organize, bring the strongest gusts across the northern areas of the Gulf and the channeled terrain, such as the Turnagain Arm location, with this low pressure setting up just to the east of Kodiak Island. Looking at another round of thunderstorms tomorrow as it warms up across the interior. And here's this cold front, which just kind of moves in tonight and then hangs up on the northwest coast. The really cold temperatures behind this front, but for the most part, temperatures on your Wednesday are going to be very similar to what we saw today. Across the eastern areas of the Bering, continued fog and light rain, and fog out there towards the western areas of the Bering and Aleutians. Looking at your forecast on Thursday, not much change across the Bering locations, but we do see this low pressure system bring some continued rainfall across the southeast and the Gulf coastal areas. So these are the areas that are going to be the hardest hit as this low pressure system spins out here, and also rain across the eastern areas of the Kenai, with gusty winds as upper level systems move some energy around above this low pressure system. We'll see, winds be, coming up and then diminishing, and then as another upper level low sends the energy around, we'll see another increase in the winds. Across the interior areas of the state, continued threats for thunderstorms, and across the northern interior of the state and the western part of the Brooks Range, expect to see some steadier rain as we head later into your Thursday. So temperatures today were cooler across the southeast in the mid-50s, with temperatures ranging into the mid-50s to lower 60s across the rest of the Gulf of Alaska. Across the interior, mainly saw temperatures in the mid-60s to mid-70s, with Huslia seeing temperatures this afternoon up to 75 degrees. A little bit cooler across the northern coast there. Wainwright saw temperatures climbing up to 47 to 49 degrees in the afternoon. Along the western areas of the state, we saw temperatures in the mid to upper 50s, and some temperatures peaking into this lower 60s this afternoon. Much of the Bering is pretty much hanging out in the low to mid 50s. Now looking at your temperatures for tonight, not much change out across the Bering, with temperatures dropping down into the upper 40s. Across the Gulf coastal locations, expect temperatures just to be in the lower 50s, as well as much of the state, with the coolest temperatures along the north and northwest coast into the lower 40s, possibly into the upper 30s. Now looking at your temperatures for tomorrow, very similar. to today, possibly a little bit warmer with afternoon breaks in the 70s across central interior. The northern tier of the state will be a range in the lower 50s to near 60 degrees. Now across the southeast, expect temperatures again to be in the upper 50s, possible upper or middle 60s for the southeastern locations. Across the Kenai and onto the southwest, mainly in the mid 60s, and across the Bering, expect temperatures in the 50s again. Now, as we head into your flying conditions for tomorrow, we'll see much of the state is going to be under VFR conditions with the IFR and VFR mainly across the Bering and also across the coastal locations along the Gulf. A little bit of MVFR conditions in the morning there across the Alaska Range. However, some improvement is going to occur during the later part of the day. And then for the Bering in the afternoon, they will stay socked in with that ridge out there. Now your passes in more depth, Anatuvik, and both Adigan Pass are going to be VFR tomorrow. And then we'll see Lake Clark and Merrill Pass stay mainly MVFR, and Rainy Pass will possibly go MVFR to VFR late in the day. And we'll see Windy Pass go MVFR in the morning and VFR late in the day. And Isabel Pass will do the same thing, MVFR to VFR. And looking at Mentasta, we'll see good conditions there tomorrow, MVFR, and Tenita will also be VFR tomorrow. Now, Portage will be IFR, possibly improving to MVFR later in the day. And then we'll see Chilkoot and White Pass. They'll stay down with rain conditions, MVFR for them. Now, the freezing levels across the state, we have 6,000 just approaching the northwest coast during the morning time, with the 8,000 foot level widespread across much of the state. Some dipping down to 7,000 feet, a little bit cooler here across the Yakpen down to 7,000, and then a rise there across the eastern areas of the Gulf up to 10,000 feet. Now, across the Bering, we're looking at a rise between 12 to 14,000 as you head to the west. Looking at your icing for tomorrow, concerns are going to be across the northwest coast where that front's moving in, and that's going to be above 10,000 and above 8,000 feet across the eastern areas of the Gulf Coast. Now looking at your jet stream, we're seeing a flattening out in this pattern with the low pressure beginning to dig across the northwest coast. Looking at your pattern at the 9,000 foot level, here's a low pressure system with the stronger winds across the northwest coast out of the southwest. Another low pressure here, a very strong flow, bring that moisture inland, and then we're seeing a pattern of about 20 knots across the interior locations with more of a northwesterly flow across the Bering, between 20 and 30 knots, the strongest across the central areas of the Bering. Now looking at your 3,000 foot winds, very similar pattern here, 20 to 30 knots across the Bering. Change of wind directions around the low pressure system. With the approach of this system, we have a westerly flow becoming more southerly as you head towards Barrow. Now low pressure near Kodiak will also see that change of wind direction, 25 to 35 knots around that system, with a slightly stronger wind there through the central areas of the Gulf, between 30 and 35 knots. Looking at your turbulence for the area, be careful if you're across that northwestern area. That low pressure system is going to be dropping in tonight, and so turbulence below 4,000 foot for that location, and then 4,000 feet and below for the areas along the northern coast and the eastern areas of the state. So in just a moment, we'll be back with your marine forecast.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
We love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Yeah. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread. Right. The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt.
Sure.
So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing.
Okay.
That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
That sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Well, let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, you know, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels.
Okay.
And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then.
Sure.
And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. You know, just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano going
erupting.
off. Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength?
What is a wavelength?
That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths.
Okay.
But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there.
Okay.
So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here, really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns.
All right.
All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically, the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue.
Wow.
The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another.
Very interesting.
It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the North Slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood.
Sure.
In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. It's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now, you got to choose the right tool for the job. Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, but this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. And I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, you know, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing, and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Now on to your marine forecast. We're just going to chat a little bit about the sea ice edge today first. Starting off, just looking at the ice edge map here, you can see that the Chukchi Sea area is where we have some openings, and with these low pressure systems coming through and changing the wind directions, we're going to see some sloshing back and forth of the sea ice along the coastal areas. So where there's some breaks along the coast, be on the lookout for that sea ice to be moving east to west depending on your wind directions. So now taking a look and going over to the southeast forecast. For your Wednesday, we're looking at a southerly flow across the area, and like I said, there's those stronger small craft winds across the outer waters, and then seas on this day will be between 3 to 4 feet across the inner channels and between 7 and 9 feet across the outer waters, and plenty of rain there in both your Wednesday and Thursday forecast. So we'll keep a southerly flow, more of a westerly component across the outer waters on Thursday, and then winds will be lighter this day between 10 and 20 knots. The inner channels will see seas again between 3 to 4 feet, with the outer waters between 7 and 8 feet. Across the south central areas tomorrow, small craft winds across much of the area with that easterly flow to northeasterly flow across the Cook Inlet and down to Shelikof Strait, a little bit change of direction there out of the west. Now your seas on this day will be around 5 to 7 feet across the Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound. The Gulf waters will also see between 5 to 10 feet. Highest seas will be along the northern Gulf there, and Shelikof Strait tomorrow will also be around 6 feet. On your Thursday, expect the winds to start coming down, a little bit shift in directional change, but overall the winds are going to be 20 knots or less, and then seas on this day are going to be between 2 to 4 feet across the Cook Inlet. Across much of the Gulf waters, expect 5 to 8 feet, and then the Prince William Sound and the Shelikof Strait will be between 2 to 3 foot for your seas on Thursday. Now your Alaska Peninsula tomorrow, lighter wind speeds out there, 10 to 15 knots, mainly out of the west and northwest directions, and then we'll see seas 3 feet across the Bering, 4 feet across the Pacific. On your Thursday, wind speeds will start to increase across the Bristol Bay area there, 10 to 20 knots overall, and then we'll see seas again 3 to 5 feet across the Bering side and the Pacific side. Looking at your Aleutian chain forecast, lightest wind speeds out this direction, but some light drizzle and fog across the area. Westerly flow becoming more of a northwest flow as you head towards the eastern Aleutians. And then seas on this day will be between 4 to 6 feet. And as we head into your Wednesday forecast, lighter speeds yet across much of the Aleutians, between 10 to 15 knots, becoming more westerly across the western and central Aleutians. Seas on this day will be between 2 to 4 feet across the area. So we are still expecting that patchy fog to continue. Now across the western coastal locations, expect winds to be primarily out of the west to northwest, variable out towards the Pribilof Islands and out towards the north central areas of the Bering. Expect seas between 2 to 4 feet and lots of patchy fog and light rain conditions continuing. A southwesterly flow on your Thursday, higher wind speeds there as St. Lawrence Island will be up to 25 knots, small craft advisory, and then we'll see seas 2 to 6 feet, highest seas across the northern areas of the Bering. Looking at the north and northwest coast, seeing winds tomorrow, strongest across Kotzebue Sound, out of the west at 25 knots, more of a southwesterly flow, and then becoming south as you head over towards the eastern Beaufort seacoast. On your Thursday forecast, expect the stronger winds to be across the west coast, 20 to 25 knots, small craft out there with plenty of rain and fog on your Thursday forecast, and more of a south to westerly flow across the north and eastern Beaufort seacoast. Now, looking at a recap of your forecast, the areas that are going to be the wettest as we head into tonight is going to be across the southeast and the northern coastal locations. Low pressure system drops into the northwest tonight, but will not bring too much rainfall until we head into midweek. Across the western areas of the state, we're expecting patchy fog and light drizzly conditions across the eastern Bering locations. Now, as we head into Wednesday, here's this low pressure system in the Gulf, brings some gustier winds along the low pressure system, so expect winds between 25 to 35 miles per hour around this system, and also across the eastern areas of the Gulf. Be prepared to see 1 to 2 inches across the northern handle here, and be aware of your local streams and rivers as we see higher rain accumulations heading to Wednesday, especially along this low pressure system. Now to the north, expect thunderstorms through Thursday forecast across the central interior and across the northern tier of the state. We're going to see some heavier rain begin to move in on your day Thursday. Expect the patchy fog conditions to continue across the eastern areas of the Bering, and the rest of the Bering is going to stay under that fog pattern. Now, just a quick recap, we do have a watch out there for the Taya River in the southeast, and that's for the heavier rain expected on Wednesday. And then we also have the Chena River across the Fairbanks area. They are under a flood advisory through Friday as the river levels remain high and continued rainfall through the end of the week. Now, also for the Copper River, you'll want to watch out for the Kennecott River there, flood advisory, as we're expecting those rainfall levels to peak during the day tomorrow. Thanks for staying with us tonight, and I'll be back with you again tomorrow. Have a good evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, sustaining Alaska's pipeline and its operations today and into the future.